The Northeast is expected to get impacted by a significant winter storm as we approach the late Monday into early Tuesday timeframe, where many areas could experience close to 8 inches of snow, including the bigger cities right up along the Northeast coast. And we have the potential of another snowstorm approaching by the later part of this week, where we could see another major nor'easter develop just off the coast. So taking a look at the latest depiction of the European model at this time, we do see that it's rather quiet for most of the United States, but we have been seeing some thunderstorm activity occurring right in between Kansas and Oklahoma, as we do see the pressure is down to 983 millibars, which is powerful enough to, of course, create a significant winter storm. And by the way, with this first winter storm, the certainty is very high. So if you're forecasted to receive snowfall in the Northeast, then you should expect snowfall. This isn't one of those scenarios where the forecast is so uncertain like we've been seeing in prior snowstorms, and then the snow maybe changes to where you won't get snowfall. This won't be the case this time, as the bigger cities up along the coast, including New York City and Boston, will get involved with heavy snowfall from this storm system. And continuing to move forward, we do see that there's quite a bit of convection with this low pressure system, and it continues to move further northeastward. But like I said in my previous videos, we've been seeing this ridge just to the east of this low pressure system begin the weekend, and as a result, this low pressure system won't move as far northward to allow that warm air to intrude the Northeast, primarily make it a rain event, which has been a trend we've been seeing pretty much the entirety of the winter for the Northeast. This won't be the case this time because now this ridge is a lot weaker, so we're seeing less of a strong southerly flow to bring this low pressure system as well as warm air further northward. So as a result, we're going to see the cold air linger around a little more, and it's going to linger around long enough for the moisture to intrude northeast to a point where many areas, even up along the coast, will experience precipitation in the form of snowfall. Continuing to move forward, we see exactly that as we approach the very late time on Monday into the early Tuesday timeframe. We see snow begin to approach Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, and this even impacts central New Jersey, which has been a development as of recent with the two latest computer models, or they want to bring the snow a little bit further southward than they anticipated. So even portions of central New Jersey, such as Trenton and New Brunswick, could get involved with some accumulating snowfall. So you want to pay close attention to that. And of course, New York City gets involved, which might pretty much be the first significant snowstorm New York City has experienced this winter, where not one snowstorm in New York City has produced more than an inch of snowfall. And it is likely at this point that this will be the snowstorm, the biggest snowstorm that you've seen this winter. So in New York City, you need to prepare accordingly, as if you could receive 1 to 3 inches. And I wouldn't rule out the possibility you experience more than 3 inches of snow, depending on where that rain snow line is exactly located, and depending on the temperature once we approach the late Monday timeframe. And moving forward, we see the snow bands really begin to intensify as this storm system continues to move further eastward, where we're going to see another small low pressure system develop just off the northeast coast. There's going to be just enough instability off the coast. Of course, we have the very warm Gulf Stream water, and of course sea surface temperatures are warmer than average, and that's going to interact with the cooler air mass that's just to the north of it to create another low pressure system just off the northeast coast, where that would only intensify the snow bands throughout the northeast. And in the early morning time on Tuesday, we see very heavy snowfall in New Jersey, Long Island, New York City, Connecticut. The southern portions of upstate New York as well get involved with heavy snowfall, and even portions of Pennsylvania. So this will impact millions of Americans. This won't be relegated to the interior northeast. Like I said, this will impact the more populated areas right around the New York City metropolitan area. And continuing to move forward, the snow will eventually move into Boston. However, what's interesting is that the European model doesn't expect the snow bands to be as intense by the time this approaches approaches the Boston area, as it seems like the storm will weaken, the overall storm system will weaken just a little bit, because we see that the jet stream sort of stables itself out to the point where there isn't a high amount of instability, but you should expect close to 3 inches or so in the Boston area as well. And like I said, for this storm system, the forecast is very certain. So if you're expected to receive snowfall in the European model scenario, you should expect snowfall and prepare accordingly, because the forecast is certain. We're less than 24 hours out from this event occurring, so that's when we really get a good idea of what's going to happen with this storm system. So New York City, New Jersey, and a large portion of southern New England, you need to prepare for anywhere between 3 to 6 or potentially 6 to 12 inches of snow, depending on where you are in the Northeast. I'll get more in detail with that once we take a look at the snowfall accumulation forecast, but just know, expect snowfall from this storm system if you're under the snow forecast for the two most reliable computer models, which is the European and the GFS model, because certainty is very high at this point. Where the certainty becomes definitely a lot lower is with this second storm system that could move through by the early part of the weekend, where we see that as we approach the midweek, we're going to see a low pressure system move down the California coast by right around the March 1st to March 2nd time frame, and this should bring heavy snowfall throughout the Sierra mountain ranges, and even the higher elevations of Southern California will get involved with even more snowfall. So this will be very impactful for millions of along the west coast. So you want to pay close attention to the heavy snowfall over there, and including the four corner states. However, what's interesting is that this low pressure system will not only move down the California coast, bringing a heavy amount of snowfall, but there's going to be, of course, plenty of cold air behind it. And we're going to see, and while I did say that with this storm system moving through, the ridge will significantly weaken, there's still going to be a piece of the ridge that's going to be a lot weaker, but it's still going to linger around the southeast, and this same ridge will begin to re-strengthen once this low pressure system moves through, and that should allow the warm air to, of course, that should allow the temperature to become warmer than average for much of the southeast, thanks to the ridge strengthening and creating a stronger southerly flow, which should enhance the instability, because behind this low pressure system, there's plenty of Arctic air that's going to interact with the very warm temperatures located in the Gulf Coast states. So that should enhance the instability for this storm to rapidly intensify once it approaches the Midwest, the southern Midwest, and we could see severe weather associated with this as well. So in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi, want to pay close attention to that possibility, because it seems like there's going to be quite a bit of instability by the time we approach during the late weekend, which is March 3rd on Friday. And continuing to move forward, we do see a large area of heavy snow develop just to the north of it, as, like I said, the cold air is expected to linger over the northeast a little bit longer than anticipated. And while I did say the ridge will strengthen by the time the low pressure system approaches the southeast, it won't strengthen to a point where it'll bring overwhelmingly powerful, strong southerly flow to bring those warmer temperatures right up along northeast to force the cooler air further northward. Instead, we're going to see the ridge be just weak enough to not really bring a strong enough southerly flow to push this low pressure system further northward or change its trajectory into track further northward. We're going to see the cold air linger a little bit more, and this low pressure take a little bit more of a southerly track for, of course, precipitation to fall in the form of snowfall, thanks to the cooler temperatures we're seeing in the northeast. And as a result, New York City, Philadelphia, large portion of New England gets involved with extremely heavy snowfall. The European model with this storm system is expecting over a foot of snow with this specific storm system, and the pressure is quite low, down to 980 84 millibars, which is quite powerful to bring heavy snowfall not only to the Northeast, but we see in the Midwest as well. Indianapolis, Illinois, Cleveland get involved with a very powerful snowstorm in this scenario, as it is definitely something we're going to need to pay close attention to. And another thing too is that there's going to be a ridge just to the north of it, but since this low pressure system is going to be to the east of this ridge, we're going to see a stronger northeasterly flow to linger that cooler air to the northeast. So we see a heavy snow event for the northeast in this scenario on the Friday time frame. There's still uncertainty, especially not only due to the fact that we're still 5 days out from this event, but it's also due to the fact that the GFS model is still in a pretty big disagreement regarding the exact trajectory of this storm system, where the GFS model wants to take this storm system a lot further northward, which brings more of a rain event for the coastal northeast and more snow into the areas further westward, where Chicago would get more involved in the GFS model scenario when it comes to this storm system. So we're going to need to pay close attention to how fast this ridge in the southeast will strengthen. If it strengthens a little faster, then we should see the storm move further northward, impacting more of the Midwest rather than the Northeast. However, if this ridge ends up remaining weak or strengthens a lot slower than anticipated, then we should see this snow impact more of the Northeast states rather than the Midwest states. So we're going to need to pay close attention to how this ridge builds as we approach the midweek. And a big way to determine this is the strength of this low pressure system, because of course, if the low pressure system strength is a little bit too strong, a little bit too early, then that would create a lot of convergence along the surface and a lot of divergence in the upper levels, to the point where the high level of divergence in the atmosphere aloft needs to sink somewhere, and it'll sink towards this weaker ridge, and that ridge would rapidly intensify thanks to the stronger convergence and divergence we're seeing aloft with this low pressure system. So that's only something we're going to need to keep in mind. We're going to need to pay close attention to the initial strength of this storm as it approaches the west coast, because I'll give a good indication of how strong this ridge will be just to the east of it. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days regarding the exact trajectory, but this could be even more significant than the snowstorm that's expected to impact the Northeast within the next 24 to 48 hours. So there's definitely something to at least be aware of, because this could be very, very significant. Now let's take a look at the GFS model's forecast. We see that the GFS model in this scenario is showing a very similar forecast when it comes to this first storm system. Continuing to move forward, we see snow in a lot of the same areas. Want to bring the snow even a little bit further southwards, where maybe even portions of southern New Jersey get involved. But the point is that New York City, you should expect accumulating snowfall, so as southern New England. At this point, the forecast is very certain, so make sure you prepare accordingly, as this should approach the Monday night into the early Tuesday time frame for many of you guys, where like I said, you could expect anywhere from 3 to 6 to 6 to 12 inches of snow. However, with this second storm system, like I said, it becomes more uncertain because the GFS model is showing a bigger disagreement compared to what the European model is stating, because we do see that initially the low pressure system just to the just to the west of this ridge is a lot stronger, and that would create a higher level of divergence aloft associated with this low pressure system to create a higher level of convergence in the upper levels of the atmosphere over this ridge, strengthen this ridge, and that would force the low pressure system to move further northward and bring more of the snow to the northern Midwest. But we still do see snow in this scenario, but it's the low pressure system is just a little bit further west compared to the European model. There's still time to iron out the forecast, but we're now seeing agreement between the two computer models that heavy snow could occur by the late week as this low pressure system continues to head further eastward. So we're going to need to pay close attention to how strong this ridge will be just to the east of this low pressure system. Take a look at what the European model is forecasting when it comes to the 500 millibar height anomaly. We do see that there's this big ridge located just to the east of this low pressure system, and as we continue to move forward with the forecast, you're going to see that this ridge will eventually weaken like we anticipated, and it's going to weaken just enough to allow the cold air just to the north of this low pressure system to intrude New York City, northern New Jersey for plenty of areas along the coast to receive snowfall, and the areas for southward as well, such as southern New England, where we're going to see this ridge weaken enough to prevent the southerly winds from taking over and bringing up the temperature. But continuing to move forward, we do see that this ridge just to the west of this low pressure system will begin to strengthen, and continuing to move forward with this second snowstorm. The European model expects the ridge to be just strong enough to steer it northward, but just weak enough to allow snow to intrude the northeast. So depending on how strong this ridge is, which will ultimately depend on how strong this low pressure system initially is as it approaches the United States, that will determine who will get the snowfall. The stronger the ridge and low pressure system is, the less likely of a chance they're going to receive snowfall in the northeast. So we're going to need to pay close attention to this pattern as we approach the midweek. And we won't get a definitive answer, I'll say, probably until Wednesday, or at least a more certain answer until Wednesday. So I'll keep you guys updated. In terms of what the European model is forecasting when it comes to snowfall over the next 7 days, this will be a quite inactive week when it comes to winter weather for the Northeast in a scenario like this, because many areas would experience over a foot of snow according to what the European model is stating. With this first snowstorm, for most of the Northeast, you should expect anywhere between 3 to 6 to 6 to 12 inches of snow. More likely on the lower end of 6 to 12, more like 6 to 9 inches in the pink. But still, a large area could experience major travel concerns for your Tuesday morning commute, as the snow should move through the overnight hours on Monday. So in New York City, if you commute on Tuesday morning, you definitely want to make plans if the roads end up being too dangerous. So make sure to be aware of that scenario. And then Hartford, Boston could get involved with heavy snowfall as well from this first snowstorm. But the next snowstorm, the second snowstorm, if it were to come for fruition for the Northeast, this will be even more significant, where we do see the heavy snowfall even move into the Midwest, where a large area of Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio would experience over a foot of snow, as that would be record-breaking territory for portions of the Midwest. So there's definitely something to keep in mind. And in the Northeast, we do see a large area experiences over a foot of snow in this scenario. But the GFS model is showing a scenario that's a little bit different compared to the European model. In terms of what the GFS model is forecasting over the next several days, we do see for this first snowstorm, the GFS model showing a very similar scenario, large area of 3 to 6 to 6 to 9 inches of snow throughout the Northeast, so make sure to prepare accordingly. But for the second snowstorm, we see the snow is a little bit further northward, but we still do see very heavy snowfall for much of the Northeast, where for the week, the Northeast would experience over a foot of snow. So there's definitely something to pay close attention to over the next several days. And the forecast will likely become more certain as we approach the Wednesday time frame. So I'll keep you guys updated regarding that. Another thing I want to show you guys is a more closer look at the snowfall accumulation forecasts, because it's going to be a close forecast for certain areas such as New York City, where right up along the Interstate 95 corridor, we see a pretty stark difference when it comes to snowfall accumulation. Just to the southeast of the Interstate 95 corridor, you should expect only maybe around an inch of snow, but just to the northeast, you could experience 5 to 8 inches, as this is going to be a very close forecast for New York City. And I want to show you this because you're not very far from experiencing heavier snowfall than anticipated. So don't be surprised if you see snowfall that's potentially lower or potentially a lot higher than 1 to 3 inches of snow, because any variations in the rain snow line will make a big difference, and the temperature will make a big difference because that will definitely determine how fast the snowfall accumulates on the surface, because of course the temperature is warmer in New York City thanks to the pavement retaining more heat. And if we're able to see the temperature drop lower than anticipated, that would of course enhance snowfall in New York City. So we want to pay close attention to the small details like this as we approach tomorrow, because that'll be a big determinant in how much snowfall you will receive in some of these areas that are close to the rain snow line. So here's my forecast when it comes to the next two major snowstorms. We do see that I'm expecting a large area of 6 to 9 inches of snow. This should be your first major snowstorm for many areas in the Northeast, so we want to prepare accordingly, and we need to pay close attention to the potential of a major snowstorm by the Friday to Saturday time frame for the Northeast. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days, but I thank you guys for watching.